Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone. Good morning, sabah al-khair. So I hope you had a great session with Dr. Colin. Really, you know, so I listened to some of his presentations several times. I really, every time I enjoy, mashallah. It's amazing to see someone who, you know, came to Islam compared to those who were born as Muslims later on, that will get really grasp such things in a very deep level. What's going on? There's some problem. Is it?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. So what we're going to do, I know you know, most of you are quite excited to see how we can, you know, move from talking to practicing and applying. So in a way that you just want to say is we want to cook some things. So you know, it's basically you get the recipe, you get the ingredients, you want to cook a cake and enjoy and eat, you know, and try to see how you can present to others. So that's how we're going to start it today, inshallah. So we're going to move towards the practical side, application side, and then to see how we'll first, essentially today in my presentation try to address 3 questions based on the model that we have. And it's all based on the concept that we discuss. Essentially, we think until we get all this, you know, we get the recipe, we get the ingredients, you cannot cook, let's say, what you want to do. So what we have provided so far, in a way, it's a kind of ingredients and recipe. And what we're going to do now is actually get into the kitchen and to see how we cook some things that we can enjoy ourselves first. We taste to see whether it's likable. And then we'll, if it's worthy, we will hopefully share with others, have them to enjoy as well. Okay?
Biryani.
Biryani? Okay. It could be, yes. What we're going to address 3 questions when we talk about the model. So what question? No, actually, we're going to start again with the why question, what question, and how question. Okay, those are 3 questions that the way I designed the presentation. So we talked a lot in terms of why we need a model, but we're going to talk why thinking. Because the model name is a 5D thinking, why thinking. Okay, and then we're going to talk about why 5D thinking, why dimensional thinking. So those will be the 2 why questions we try to address. Then we're going to talk about what is the 5D thinking model. What are the key components of the model? We will discuss that, give an example. And then third, we talk about how to teach in 5D model and how to write in 5D model. So we're going to address 2 questions on this as well. So first, why thinking? Okay, and so we're going to have, as usual, we're going to start with our brain exercise. Okay, so a little brief background, then we'll have you to really think about it. In US, several years ago, NPR did a survey and asked educators to find 50 best teachers ever. Okay, so and they tried to think about it, and then they came up with this guy, and we don't know his picture is true or not, Socrates. So the number 1 person appear on their list was Socrates. Okay, so basically we need to think about first, how do we know who is the best teacher? How would you define to be best teacher? Or how would you identify the key trait of best teacher? Or how would you, if you have a quick way to say, this is my, we'll call it proxy indicator, that I look at this, then I can judge and say, yes, the teacher is really a great teacher, or the teacher is really excellent teacher. What will be your only give me one thing that with which you can identify the greatness of a teacher.
Look at his or her students, pupils.
Look at students, see? I will get an answer. So basically you look at the fruit. So the tree is judged by its fruit. The teachers is judged by its students. So when we really look at it, you see, when we look at Socrates, we see he raised a student. What was the student of Socrates?
Plato?
No, it was Plato.
Plato.
Because we learn most everything about Socrates from Plato, actually. So Socrates he really enjoyed teaching to the level he did not want to spend any time on writing. He didn't write anything. He just enjoyed teaching, and he did not teach in a formal setting as well. He would just go and interact with people. He would just go and walk in the market, mainly. That was his school. And he would come across to people and ask them questions. Or say, you know, what do you think about justice? How would you define justice? And the person will define, will say, how would you define justice? What is justice? Of course, in Muslim we don't have justice, therefore you will have the define, right? If we knew what justice is, we would be very just, right? How would you define justice? In a very short, concise way, in one sentence. Yeah?
Where rights of everybody is protected.
Right, protected. But first of all, you need to define justice. Then you said, yeah, right. What is right of people? Yes.
Things being in their right place.
Things being in their right place. So give everyone and everything what they actually deserve, right? That you can say justice. Now then Socrates was challenged. Will say, okay, now imagine that someone lend you a weapon and then come back and say, now I want my weapon back, but I'm going to kill this person right away. Should you return that weapon or not? Is it just to return the weapon or not? That's he will ask that. So in other words, Socratic way was actually always bringing some question to have you to clarify your answer and to know and to conclude that what you really think about whatever the concept is. Socrates will never give you a ready answer, will never tell you what is his own answer, but he will always question your answer to the level, help you to understand that what you are actually making mistake. Then ultimately, that you will define yourself what justice is, he will not define to you. Now this is a very much in line with what we call constructive learning theory in modern time. So the constructive learning theory is based on a very similar Socratic idea, okay? But here is what Socrates says. He was considered to be the best teacher from the Western point of view ever. But he says, I can't teach. I can teach anybody, he says, and I can teach anything, he says. He's not saying that I cannot teach if you are not interested in a subject. He's not saying that I cannot teach if the topic is really hard topic. He's saying I cannot teach anybody and I cannot teach anything. And he was the best teacher. What does he mean?
It means if the student is not willing to accept and be active when he is really receiving these, whether skill or knowledge or whatever, he won't be able to learn it. He's not gonna grasp it. He's not gonna acquire it.
Do you agree with Socrates? Do you agree with Socrates? Do you think you cannot teach anyone anything?
I think if we were to if we were trying to use today's education model to answer this question. What he was saying is, I'm a facilitator of learning.
Okay. But why you were saying that? Why do you think that you cannot teach anybody anything? Why you can? Like, let's say I come here with very clear agenda. Let's say I use the assessment and grading, assume like your student, I use grading, threaten you that you're gonna fail if you don't learn, and then actually, you know, in this case, present the topic. Don't you think I can make you learn? No?
You can feed me information.
Oh, I can feed you information, but I cannot make you learn? Why? Why I cannot make you learn? What does he mean by learning?
You technically ignite the minds of the people.
So, means he's not talking about the transfer of information. He's not talking about that whether you can actually upload some information to the mind of learners, which basically we call this as a rote learning, that in which you just memorize something, which is essentially, I would say, 90% of the time what 90% of teachers will do in a classroom. We will say that's not the real teaching. The teaching, what is the teaching in this case? What is the learning in his understanding?
Knowledge and plus skills.
Knowledge and skills. It's, yeah.
Life-changing experience.
Does he really put emphasis on skills? Skills will come as an outcome, but first we need to define what really he means by learning.
Life-changing experience.
No.
It's a life-changing experience where you didn't know something and then you actually absorbed it, internalized it. So then it changes the next time you're doing something and you didn't say you were taught a topic, and then the next time onwards you would do it different, and then that would be the change.
So what is the necessary things for that to happen?
Interactive.
What is the necessary thing for this to happen? That's very good to describe, but what is the key to that?
It's being the person absorbing that has to be open to that, to want to.
I think
First, to know that I do not know.
I think
That's the first part.
the main focus is on the student himself. If they want to learn, you could teach the whole class, and you see some kids will take it perfectly. Some they didn't even wear in the classroom. So it's
therefore.
First is a realization.
Sorry, innocence as a teacher. Remember you said other day that the teacher are criminals. You think students are criminals? That Socrates is saying because they are not really paying attention.
no.
I think his model is to draw out what's already inside.
Yes, to focus on the
Bring
student
out what
than
is
the teacher.
inside. That's what he's trying to do.
To make you realize this, to make the student realize why they need to know something. Why is it important for them, and how would it affect them? Once that realization is there, then the student automatically wants to get that, absorb that knowledge, because I don't want to do something which doesn't benefit me. Right? This is human being. So as soon as the teacher makes me realize why that information and knowledge is important for me, and how it would change my life, that's when I get the attention of the student.
Which is the attitude that we need to work on, the mindset and the feeling toward the learning. Before focusing on the knowledge or the skills, we need to work on their attitude, on the will in order to learn. Or how is this important to me, and how I'm going to relate it to my real life, and how I'm going to apply it later on. So transform.
Let me change the Socratic phrase a little bit. Would you agree that if I say, I cannot make anybody to believe, would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes. You can
Yeah, so
because
I cannot make anybody to believe, but I can only share with them
Evidence.
what to believe.
yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Why? Why in Islam that you are not allowed to force anyone, even if you have the whole power of the world, whether this is psychological, monetary, military, it doesn't matter. You are not allowed to use them to convert any single person. Why? Belief has to be fully a matter of free will. Why?
Because this is what's gonna make action. Because if from inside he's not willing, if he didn't believe, if he didn't feel it, Okay, so he's not gonna then practice it. This is what we're talking about the whole days. We need to build a base. As long as I believe that there is Khaliq, so later on, khalas, everything is gonna be easy for me to apply it. Okay, I have to pray 5 times a day, then yes, I'm not gonna struggle with it. I'm not gonna struggle with hijab. I'm not gonna struggle with anything, because I believed the basic is there. So then everything else I can acquire the skills, acquire the knowledge, and so on, and for sure more.
Very, very good. But we try to really understand this in terms of knowledge, teaching, learning, epistemology. So in a sense that basically, I think what really Socrates was aware when he made such statement, that he was aware of that how human truly learn something, and he made a statement and he defined his position that what you could do even as a best teacher. So what he was saying essentially, he was saying the actual learning is not the information goes to the mind, the actual learning is the something go to the heart. That is basically you truly believe in it, that transform you. That he believes that type of knowledge is only possible through your own will and own personal effort and construction.
That's why, subhanallah, you are mukhayyar. As human beings, Allah created us as beings of mukhayyarin. We choose, like Allah puts things in our path and we choose. Because once we choose, we actually go.
So, and that's why we're not supposed to force on anyone anything, no matter how much we think we are absolutely right. That's why we have to be absolutely tolerant, respectful to any idea. Because the Quran, that when you read it in the Quran, you see, the Quran says, this is the truth from God. Take it as or live it. It's your choice. And the Quran says that very clearly. There's absolutely no way for you to force on anyone anything related to the faith. Even if you're a prophet, that which is your primary mission is to go and to convey the message of God. It says your job is only the example, communicate to them. The rest is not your job. Don't
force it.
Don't
push it.
That. Okay, so that's very essential. Even let's say you have a student, they don't listen, they don't fine, because you can't change anybody. You can't make anybody to really learn or believe in what you believe. The only one you can change in the world
is
yourself alone. So the only thing you could do, be the change that you want to see in your students. Be the change that you want to see in your kids. That's the only thing you could do in this case. So essentially, it means that in a way, it's take away the responsibility, the burden from us, and say, you know, it's not your job and it's not within your power to convert anyone. Therefore, it says Islam is not missionary religion. You don't have any mission to go and to convert anyone.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
So, so what do we say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, لو كنت فظا غليظا لانفضوا من حولك. So that's the teacher, right? So now
can you say again with the meaning?
If you were like rude and not welcoming, the people, the Muslims at that time, they will go away from you.
Sure.
So that put a role also on the teacher. So how can we balance those two things?
Yeah, that's very good. That's what's going to come. And actually, I will come to that one, because the best teacher from the Islamic perspective, who is the best teacher? Not Socrates. Who is the best teacher? The Prophet. How do you know? We're not talking about Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. We're talking about Prophet and thousands of companions. Okay, so we have thousands of students. They become the best of humanity. Okay, it's very clear Stein he was the best teacher ever. Now the question here, how did he really manage to be that? So for that one, it's really we need to look at how the Prophet did it. Okay, so Nursi put it very, very precise, concise, and eloquent way. He said the Prophet did in a 4-stage. He says first the Prophet was mahbub al-qulub, which basically means the Prophet gained the love and the trust of people. He was Muhammadul Ameen. And everyone, if you read the story, every companion was thinking that they are the most beloved one by the Prophet. And even their story, one of the companions thought that the Prophet loved him the most. He went and asked question, obviously. The Prophet started with Abu Bakr. He said, who do you love most? The Prophet says Abu Bakr first. And he mentioned, and then the list was going on and on. He realized his name is not there, he just stopped there. But he was, the way the Prophet was treating him, he thought that perhaps he is the number one. Okay, so you can see how the Prophet been treating the companion. So treat with the care, with compassion, with the love, with the absolute trust. That even when those enemies were after him, tried to kill him, remember they're plotting? He left Ali there at home to return what's the amanah that he had it to the owner. And now, what some Muslims do when they go to US and Canada, they say, you know, this is a Darul Harb, now we can actually get the credit and use it when we return back to our country. That's the way we harm our enemies. Really? Was it the way that Prophet did it? You can't be, in this case, if you broke the trust, if non-believer, non-Muslims do not trust you as a human, they will not even pay attention to your religion. So therefore, it's absolutely essential, first and foremost, particularly for us who live in a Western country, non-Muslim society, to be extremely careful in our acts. So the first, mahbub al-qulub, means that you have to treat them nice, gain their love. That's for your students, whether your neighbor or whether any other people. And you establish the trust between them. Second, it says the Prophet was mu'allim al-uqul, which means the Prophet, peace be upon him, knew how to address the topic in a way that the mind can digest. He will use analogy, he will use the story, he will use every occasion, every opportunity. So in a way, it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna study Quran today. The way even the Quran was revealed upon certain occasion, which means that basically the teaching, everything in life is a teaching opportunity. So when you see something happen, we see how we can actually use this as an opportunity to reflect on it. So that's basically, we need to look at the prophetic way of how to break it down, the subject, how to make it relevant to the audience, how to bring particularly analogy type of things, story type of things. There are many, many lessons we can see. You cannot just say, oh, this is a great subject, I'm going to teach anyway, and it's their job to understand. It's like you're cooking a food. You need to make sure you cook it very well. You need to make sure that you add a spice and salt that tastes delicious. You need to make sure you cut it, dice it, slice it in a way they can swallow easily. And you cannot give a big chunk and expect them to swallow that, which means you have to basically break down your subject. So the way you cook it, if you do not cook your well, if you cannot enjoy the meal that you prepare for your student, don't expect them to enjoy it.
But first of all, it should be according to their preference. And we might have different tastes, so I need to know them first so that it's going to be suitable for them.
Obviously. Or if you're going to introduce a new one, you have to find a way to taste it first and gradually have them to like it as well. Yep. I mean, you don't have to start with what they like only, right? Otherwise, you're going to start with the kabza only, right?
Not only what they like, but according to what they need. Correct. It's not, maybe they like to play the whole time. Of course, I'm not going to do that. But I'm gonna take care of their whole human.
One of the traits that I heard about Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the fact that he spoke in the same dialect as the person he was speaking to, and this is the way that he used to have ulfa between himself sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the person he's speaking to, or the tribe that he's talking to, and that created kind of like a bridge between the two that made it easier for them to understand each other and to learn from him, because they see themselves in him, for example. So this is one of the really nice things that I learned about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
I think maybe, Sister Uzma, we need to in the future prepare a whole session on this one in terms of like some lessons from prophetic teaching, because there are a lot of lessons there. So I think we can spend a whole session on it. He says the third one the Prophet did was he was murabbil nufus. Tarbiyatun nafs is absolute essential, the character building. It's not only knowledge and understanding by mind and heart, it's actually to be aware that you have nafs, that nafs is nafs al-ammara, as the Quran says, inna nafsa la ammarati bisu illa ma rahima rabbi, that you need to be aware of this enemy within. That's number one, is in this regard to nafs, in terms of nafs al-ammara. Number two is the ego, ananiya. So you need to be aware, we need to be aware of this, and then see how we can basically restrain, train, control that as well. So Prophet, peace be upon him, did bring this into education as well when he was helping them. And the best example is Omar before Islam and after Islam, that when you study his life and you see if such a terrible, inhuman person could be the best of humanity, that you cannot say, you cannot disregard the potential of any students, no matter how bad they are. They could not be worse than Umar before Islam. Okay, so that's, but we have to know that it's not only about knowledge, it's also tarbiyah in terms of tazkiyah, tarbiyah, understanding the human nature in terms of the nafs and ego, and see how you can restrain that as well. Okay, the fourth one, he says the Prophet was the Sultan al-Arwah. The Sultan al-Arwah means that his ruling was not over the body, over the land. His ruling was over the soul, to the level that you see how the companion will tell or say, all of my, let's say, mom and dads and everyone's be sacrificed to you, O Prophet. Tell us what you want, we will do it right away. Why? Because they were fully submitted to the prophetic goal in this regard.
Hocam, sorry, just for addition, thank you very much for this, because like years ago I was like searching for what is the exact sunnah in dawah, like how the Prophet ﷺ acted. Of course we know from so many hadiths, he is acting in that way and in this way, but I never combine ustaz these four dimensions for the Prophet ﷺ dawah and his living actually with his method of dawah. So thank you very much.
Okay, so now we're trying to, our question was why thinking. So for the mind particularly, we have to go that why, because again, that if learning, ultimate deep learning is a matter of will of the learner, we have to really ignite the design and have the person to really act and to learn the subject, to construct understanding. Now there are a lot of ayah in Quran that encourage us to think, like أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, don't you think? تعقلون. And then قل هل يستوي الأعمى والبصير أفلا تتفكرون أفلا تتذكرون لعلكم تتفكرون لعلهم يتفكرون. Now there are different phrases. It's really, there is wisdom in every one of them, because تعقلون is about aql, reasoning. تتفكرون is about contemplation, deep reflection. تتذكرون is actually, I understood in terms of intuitive reflection, that something from your own personal experience, that you remember what it takes for this to happen because you went through that. That is telling you, don't you remember, don't you, in this case, remember from yourself. Then you see أفلات لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. So that's also interesting. Why is they say لقوم يتفكرون? It means like there are certain things that you can collectively think and discover and understand. Because qawm is talk about the collective body that discussing, talking, thinking together. It's not individual. Okay? So which means there are certain ayah you can discover if you actually engage in collective thinking together. Okay, so but our favorite one that we use motto for our 5D thinking is the one with blue font.
Blue?
The green one, sorry. So you can call it blue as well, right? Just name it. Okay, it's, the ayah says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Inna sharra dawabi inda Allah. Inna, you know, in Arabic is emphasis. Verily, for sure. You know, it's like putting emphasis on that one. Inna sharra dawabi inda Allah. The worst moving creatures, that means about a living being, the worst moving creatures in the eyes of Allah, summun bukmun alladhina summun bukmun, right? Alladhina la ya'qilun. Imam in Baqarah there's some umyun bukmun, there's some, but here is actually, even in Baqarah is always start with sum, right? That umyun. So why summun come first? Sam is listening, hearing. It says the worst creatures in the eyes of Allah is the one first who doesn't listen. Second, who doesn't talk or speak or convey or communicate. Third, who doesn't think, use the mind. Now, obviously, you can reverse it. You can say the best creature in the eyes of Allah in this case, those who are open to hear.
Listening.
Second, who are actually communicating and sharing with others what they know. Third, who are actively using their mind, right? Because the opposite must be true as well. Now, why summun come first? What does it mean, say summun? Is it like when you talk about that you're deaf? It's not like you're deaf. What does summun mean?
Not listen to understand first.
What does it mean not listening?
Means usually nowadays we listen to answer. We don't listen to understand and find out what exactly that person wants and think. So we just listen to answer that person.
So in other words, when you say we are not listening means that you're not interested in subjects.
It's active listening.
Yeah, you don't really want to learn. You know, you don't think it's important for you. So you don't think that is really something worthy of your attention. That's when we say not listening. Actually, most people are saying, I'm busy, you know, so I have something else to do, which means they're not listening, okay? So, or like there's something else, let's say, on their phone, another way that they think is more important, they're not listening. Which means they're not really paying attention because they don't really believe this is important for them. Or they are not open-minded to even hear about it, like things about it. How many people, let's say in US and Canada, are really open even to hear about Islam? Why? Because the way they present Islam make most people to completely close their ear to Islam. Completely. For them, this is not even something they should pay attention, let alone to accept it. So therefore, they label it, based on what they hear from media, this is a religion of terrorists that's emerging in deserts, you know, and those, you know, bunch of backward people, and, you know, they are ignorant, they all want to be like us. Look, you know, when they get money, they just try to imitate us, so what can we learn from that?
Hocam, isn't that valid for us to lose, you know, because Allah mentions that very, very in the first one.
Yeah, basically seeing that it's true for everyone, that means you have to be open-minded. That means that you should actually listen whenever you see there is a truth and wisdom, no matter where it comes from. Because you are open-minded to listen. You don't think that I have everything, I'm fully, you know, cooked, I'm fully, you know, mature and I don't need anything.
Well, I remember the Hadith al-Qudsi, you know, Allah says, whoever seeks knowledge, I'm going to give the knowledge. But whoever seeks, you know, richness, it's up to me, you know. I'm just saying in the meaning, I can't remember it's Arabic. But, you know, seeking knowledge, seeking to hear, seeking to listen, seeking to be interested in is like the first step to be able to be guided towards the haqq and haqiqah.
Exactly. So therefore, but again, how would you ignite this interest? It's you can only, that has to come from within. Therefore, you can only make them to think and present it, that what I call, provide some appetizer. That was when we start with the brain exercise. Essentially, we try to say, you know, something here, I want you to really pay attention, that you could perhaps join us, we can learn something together. Okay, so, but therefore, it's essential to know and come to a human being, so they have to be, in a sense, that ignited to desire for learning first. So, in our model, that's the type of thinking that basically guide the model. So essentially, the overall curriculum that we design is based on system thinking, because the curriculum we think has to be holistic. So, and based on the Tawhidi paradigm or Tawhidi worldview, but the model of integrating, at subject level, the 5D thinking consists of the 5 type of thinking we're going to discuss, and we're going to talk about that. And the other inductive, deductive, convergent, divergent thinking, that's actually we use within the model as well as needed. So, but our objective is to really encourage people to engage in thinking. So in this regard, it's really 5D thinking is an approach based on the Nursian Harfi perspective, and it is based on the understanding that the universe is a book that we can read this as we learn the language of the universe. So it's not eclectic. It's not adding the ayah and hadith to the existing textbook and make it Islamic. It's actually extractive, is to derive the already existing message and meaning within the subject, no matter what the subject that we are covering in the classroom. Okay? Now, the objective, what are the teaching objective of the 5D thinking? So, why of 5D? So again, that we discussed this a lot. We think the existing education model comes with secular ideology, and no God and no character within that. As a result, we have an excellence in terms of skill, but there is really no soul in terms of being real human being. And what we try to do, we try to bring God and character into the education and remove the ideology, filter the ideology, and the objective is to have excellence with strong faith and good characters. That's the objective that we want to accomplish. And those are the essential of the 5 dimensions of the thinking. We're going to go over each one of them. Analytical thinking, analogical thinking, critical thinking, meditative thinking, and moral thinking. That's the 5 dimensions. So again, you can see that's the ayah mentioned. We kind of use the motto. So as the center of those 5 dimensional thinking. And we also use a Socratic phrase as well with things that both can be perfectly fine to help us to really encourage for thinking. Have you seen this Bloom's taxonomy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, is it a great one? Can you identify the secular ideology in Bloom's taxonomy? Create, right? How would you change that? Create? Creation is only from creator, should never be used for human being, because the Quran is very clear. It says, well, what's that? أَفَمَنْ يَخْلُقْ كَمَنْ لَا يَخْلُقْ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ? Is it the one who can create? Can it be same with the one who cannot create? Which means that the one who can create is only Allah. He is the only Khaliq. So therefore, creation should not be used for human being. If it's used, that basically it's based on the secular ideology. So therefore, I don't like that. And so we try to really replace it. You will see how we replace. So in this case, but basically, Bloom's taxonomy is very, very good one. We use it for all effective teaching. The objective for Bloom's taxonomy telling us that the actual learning, the deep learning, is happening when you push toward a higher level of thinking. Because remembering is memorizing. Understanding, you push a little bit up in terms of understanding. Applying, if you have a problem to apply, that means you did not understand well. Okay? So analyzing, evaluating comes even higher level. You have to understand well, digest well, then you can evaluate. Otherwise you cannot really evaluate or you cannot really analyze. So therefore, the model is overall is really good. It's a very commonly used for evaluating the effectiveness of teaching. So, but we're going to, you know, a little bit modify that because it's particularly the top of it is very secular. We don't want to do that. We want to replace that.
But that one.
You're gonna change, create, observe, or build.
Yeah, construct.
Design.
Yeah, we'll see. I have two suggestions for that. But
Do you want to go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
Well, the problem, part of the problem is that we don't value the last one very much neither.
Which one?
Yeah. I know children who memorize the Quran and then they've gone flying in their further studies, right? And this concept that we shouldn't do rote learning, right? I'm not, you know, so rote learning has its place at a particular age, especially at a younger age, and it develops, especially the learning of the Quran at a very early age. It helps them with photographic memories and the way that they can and just absorb knowledge is absolutely phenomenal at a later
I think
so,
I certainly I agree with you. Like one thing I regret, you know, if I had the opportunity to really shape my own education, I will say I will have spent time to memorize Quran, but I will never memorize without knowing the meaning of Quran. I will never encourage anyone to go and spend time to memorize Quran without knowing the meaning of the Quran. Because I will say, go and memorize, but go and learn Arabic as well. So in other words, I'm not saying memorizing is nothing. I'm saying that you have to take it to the upper level. But once you start to know the meaning, you say, I wish I memorized that. I could read that whenever I want. Yes. So therefore, memorization is, we're not saying it's not important. We're saying that you should be the base, that you should really have it with the intention of take it to the upper level.
For sure. No, we're on the same page. Yeah. But often it's suggested or implied that those foundational aspects
is not important.
Are not important because using those foundational aspects, if you do it properly, and then layer it with meaning, purpose,
I think
kind of strengthens.
I think that's.
They're all important.
You know,
it's just
they're
the way
important.
it's built. But
that is the foundational aspect.
Yeah.
So what we try to do in this case in the 5D, we try to develop certain thinking skill. In first one, analytical thinking. Basically, we use this to appreciate creation through what scientific knowledge that's based on analytical thinking. And in analogical thinking, we use this for comprehension of divine action because we comprehend and understand better through analogy. For the critical thinking, we use this to filter falsehoods in existing scientific knowledge because there is ideology, so we use critical thinking to filter that. And for the meditative thinking, we use this to find the meaning and the divine names in the creation by this type of reflection. And in moral thinking, so we use this to drive certain character lessons, moral lessons, that whatever subject you study, you can actually drive it through that. Now, this is how we modify Bloom's taxonomy a little bit. So again, you have remember, understand, apply, evaluate. We put it. You can put discover. This is, I find, discover will be because everything is ultimately is discovery because it's created by God, is meant for certain purpose. As you explore, you discover. Or you could use it. The second one we're going to use is invent. But even invention in somehow is a problem because invention still give more credit to human being. Discovery give everything to God that your things is just desire to go and find something. So normally I will rather to go with discover and basically say, you know, this is you. What you do is just discovery, is not really creating. And even invention you can use it, but it's really not that good. So I use the second one as an invent. But the objective is to really push you toward a higher level of thinking skills. That's really what we try to do in Bloom's taxonomy. Now, 5D, we actually compare with the very, well-known shahada, kalima shahada. And so we think that what we do is perfect fitting into that. And ashhadu, we start ashhadu, is basically, it's analytical and analogical thinking is all about how would you bear witness first. So you have to see something, you have to observe some things first. Your faith should start with observing, bear witnessing. So in a way that we say, okay, you can do shahada, bear witnessing, by looking at the creation. Okay, and then you understand this creation through analogy, and la ilaha, which means that once you witness that, the first thing you do, la ilaha means there is no deity, there is no God, which means that this is we call the negation part. That we do this through the critical thinking. You say the cause, the nature, the chance cannot be the source of what I observe. Then illallah. This is affirmation, that is we do through the meditative thinking. That now you negate the cause and nature and chance. Then now you say, la ilaha is critical thinking, illallah, that's only Allah is basically the one is the source of this. That is the meditative thinking. Muhammadun Rasulullah, that is basically, it is the moral thinking. That's in a way that now how would you look at the prophetic practice and derive some moral lessons as he did it from the Quran, that you can become a better human being. So in this regard, we actually think the way we do in 5D thinking, that we try to, in a way that break it down, the kalima shahada, in a practical sense to bring into every subject that we do in the classroom. So in that case, basically we start from the model, start from the understanding, building the proper understanding of the self first, that we spent time yesterday on that one. And then to know that you have no power, no possession, that it's not yours, and to know that the self, the knowledge, the true understanding of the self become the key to understand the other as well once you have the first point. And then you see in a way that you yourself is a kind of microcosmos, that the whole universe is summarized within you, so you pay attention to your own personal experience and you pay attention to the complex nature that Allah granted to you. And then you realize the biggest enemies are not the outside, are actually within you. That you realize that basically in our model we say the only one who can harm you is yourself. There is no one in reality who can harm you at all other than yourself. Which basically means that you have to pay attention to the enemy within, because anyone else, when they try to harm you, actually they harm yourself, and your right is fully protected by Allah. You don't have to, in this regard, ultimately worry on that one. So in the model, again, start with negating secular God, perceiving God through His creation, and connecting and communicating with God as you see basically His sign. So again, the objective is reading, one of other objectives, to read the universe like a book or like the Quran, as we mentioned yesterday. The first things we're supposed to do, ignite curiosity and amazement. Okay? And then teach the language of the universe. How could you read that? Okay? And then perceive being as a book, which means it has the meaning dimension. That don't treat them as an object to use, see them as a book, and read the two books together. That's the book of Quran and the book of universe. That you're supposed to read them together side by side. And then objective is getting to know the author. That as you read any book, you want to actually, when I read the book, I kind of, read the mind of the author. And in a way that try to really, in a way you're communicating with the author as you read the author. Like when sometime I go to library and see those old books, I feel as if like thousands of people lining up there and saying, come and talk to me, I want to tell you something. So in a sense that the ultimate purpose behind all of those, to actually, to get to know the author. of the book of the universe and the book of the Quran.
I like how you started with curiosity and amazement, because the most dangerous things for us as Muslim is التعود على النعمة. It's to get used to have like your eyes, your ears, your food, your mom, your car, and you don't appreciate that's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all our blessing, and you have nothing to do with it, it's all from Allah. So that will really break that thing, التعود على النعمة, or you just get used to what Allah's blessing is giving you. So it's really, I like how you have the first one is this one, which is just break the chain for us to go and contemplate more.
There is a dua, the Prophet peace be upon him said, made it actually. He says, he made dua that, oh Allah, increase my amazement. Huh? What's that? There was another one as well, like in ways like make me to be amazed. There's one hadith on that one, I forget the original one, but it's like, increase my, higher means like you become amazed with what is that. Yani, when you see something you don't see as an ordinary. If I say I'll share it with you, there's one hadith on that. So again, the other objective is to learn moral and character lessons, but first we have to redefine what is good life, what is good, what is bad. Okay. Second, we have to basically teach how to read moral lessons from the universe and the Quran side by side. Third, we have to teach how to recognize goodness and blessing in everything, without exception. So, in other words, it's not like that something good, something bad, you only focus on the good side, you ignore the bad side. It's not like the cup is half full, half empty. No, the cup is actually full. But part is water, part is air. And air is as important as water. And their both is very important. So in other words, there is absolutely nothing bad. Why? Because it's everything from God. If God is all good, how can something become bad? So in this case, it's essential to actually learn the goodness and blessing in everything. Except, what is the evil? Is your bad choice. That's all. So let's say the illness come to you. If you think it's bad, then now you make it bad for yourself. But if you understand it's good, that illness will become very good for you. So in other words, is goodness and good, what is bad is really depends on how you perceive that. Okay? And then cultivating the sense of appreciation, the sense of ubudiyah, the sense of fadila in terms of virtue, the sense of humility, that's very important as well. It's really interesting, but that's cultivation should be some things that comes based on the understanding of the foundation. Like there's one of very interesting phrase Nursi says that if you intend to be humble, he says that means you are arrogant. What does it mean?
It's not an innate things inside.
Why? Let's say, why when you intend to be humble, you are arrogant? Like, let's say, I'm gonna go talk and okay, I have a PhD. There's like, let me try to really just be humble. If I intend that, Nursi says that means you are an arrogant person. Actually, what does it mean? What does it mean when you intend to be humble? That means you are arrogant.
It has to be genuine. You already noticed certain things that you achieve. They want to hide it or trying to.
So in other words, if you intend to be humble, that means you think you have something. That means you are actually, in a way, better than the others. But you don't want them somehow to be jealous of that or to feel bad about that. So you just pretend as if you are the same level. Why in reality, you are at the same level with everyone because you don't have anything anyway. So therefore Nursi used a very nice phrase. He says, when people are dying to use title, the title he used was Abu Lashay. Abu Lashay, yes. He says, Abu Lashay means I'm father of nothing. I have nothing. Like it's not like I'm PhD and this, He says Abu Lashay. Okay? So it basically means that you recognize that absolutely there's nothing that you can claim it's yours, that you can say, it's like somehow it make me better than other. Because anything you have is not yours, it's blessing from Allah. So therefore, humility is your default setting. is not something you arrive through intention. It should be part of your default setting. That once you understand and what is the source of everything that you possess, okay? And same for justice, unfortunately, you know, look at it again. Why we see all kind of injustice in Muslim worlds, you know? It's because we need to build the justice on very sound foundation. That has to be defining value for them. The other thing in our model, we basically, the existing education is very much reductionist. Science is a reductionist, means that it approaches everything in terms of pieces. It doesn't look in terms of holistic way. It doesn't show the whole picture. It shows you only the pieces. Okay? So in our model, we think it's absolutely essential to emphasize the holistic aspect of creation. Nothing can stay in existence in isolation of the entire universe. Everything, every moment is directly connected with the entire universe. So in a sense that we try to emphasize the holistic, integrated approach in the existence, in the creation. Now, what question? What are the dimensions of the 5D? So the first one, analytical thinking. For the lower grades, we call it this explore step. We call it 5 steps for, you know, grades, kindergarten to grade 6. Beyond that, we start to bring this dimension because for them it's a little difficult to say, you know, analytical thinking. They cannot get it. So instead, for them, we call it the first step is explore. Second step is compare. So we use different words. So the one in blue is the word we use for the low grades, you know, level students and material. So analytical thinking, what we try to do essentially, so we try to first filter the embedded ideology, which means that anything's in the text, in the textbook, in the topics, that's explicitly or implicitly disconnect creation and connect them to the cause, nature, and chance, will remove that. Obviously, if it talks about Mother Nature, it's gone. But if it's implied Mother Nature as well, we want to make sure it's not there as well. Because we don't want them to really get this understanding that the seed can give the tree, produce the tree. Because then now where are you going to bring God into the equation, okay? So in this case, basically, we try to get the factual truth, that we call it like what the science do in terms of the ISMI dimension, okay? And then we filter that, so we say that two-dimension analytical thinking only give us the factual information about the multi-dimension. But we filter the ideology from that. We say, wait, there is more than this. That we were going to come through that through the other thinking, okay? So in a sense that basically we do recognize the scientific approach in terms of being very effective to understand the factual side of the creation, the multi-dimension of the reality, okay? And we use that, but again, we try to really remove the ideology which implies that there is no Malakut dimension, okay? So in a sense that, let's say, you know, if we're talking about, let's say, here's the example of baklava. So if you ask how the baklava comes into existence, so you can talk about ingredients, you can talk about the recipe, but if you imply that ingredients and recipe and the tools are sufficient to give you baklava, we say you're wrong. So we take your recipe, we say science provide good recipe, we take that. Science talks nice in terms of the ingredients, we take this as well. But whenever science says or imply that baklava comes into existence with all the chef, we say stop there. That's nonsense. That can never happen. Okay? Then we take the part, and with the other part we say less things what else you need for the baklava to really comes into existence. The same thing, remember we had discussion about water, okay? So when we say what is water, so in this case science will say, oh, there's hydrogen and oxygen that come together, make bond, and then formulate, so we say that's all fine. But do not say this is the source and the cause and this is everything. So we take that part, but we say it is only part of the whole story, not the full story. Okay, and then we'll look at the rest and to see how the rest can be explained. That okay. Again, that there are, let's say, certain unique property of water you cannot explain through hydrogen and oxygen. So in that case, where do we get those properties? And truly amazing properties. So our argument is that there is ibda there. That's a creating out of nothingness. It's actually God is directly involved in creation of every droplet of water every moment. So in a way that we say, yes, science gives us partial information, but science does not talk about the full reality of how the water is being created. So and again, in a way, our objective here that basically science really, in a way, reveal the signs of God in the universe. But the only thing is that they don't know it's written in showing God, okay? But they reveal many things. So in this case, what we try to do, we say we take the scientific revelation, we filter the ideology, and then we get the student to walk through that to see how they can read God that is embedded in a scientific understanding of the universe. So in a sense, we're not really adding something, we're just making them to read it. That's already there, embedded into this knowledge, okay? The second one is analogical thinking. So we call this compare for little kids, because it's easy, that's what we do. So in that one, we try to find human or so-called man-made phenomena to compare what is God-made out there and what is basically, man-made out there. Or we call it observed phenomena because we're not talking about God yet. Okay, we call it explored one or observed one. Okay, so in this case, the objective here that we mentioned before, that you know something from your own experience, then you can use this experiential knowledge to understand what is out there. Are we here in class? Really? See a lot of escape, through the phone, right?
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Sorry, Ustad. Over on this side.
Because remember what we said at the beginning, we can teach if no one can teach anybody. Ultimately, it's your choice to learn, right? We can only present food, so therefore we don't need to waste time if really we lose our attention and the learning is not happening, right? So we can stop.
Okay, just a question that came to my mind. The slide you mentioned about the baklava and the ingredients.
Yes.
And so I'm just trying to take it into the classroom. So if the argument is the baklava cannot come into existence without the chef.
Yes.
So what about if the chef made a machine which makes the ingredients turn into baklava? So now we're getting into that causation problem now.
Exactly. That is very good question. So we need to, in this case, basically look at whether there is such machine first, or whether there is any need on the part of the chef to make such machine, and even whether there is such machine which can actually make that. Because in case, of course, this analogy is not perfect analogy. In case of cooking, you could make a machine, or you could make an oven that could, with all these things that could make the food. But actually, in case of the creation, there is absolutely no such machine made by God. The reason is that when you study the machine, like let's say honeybees or cows or seed or tree, when you study the very nature of them, you realize they do not have the necessary properties to give you the effect that seems to come from them. So in this regard, that's when you study them, you find out. Like the example of when we say the light switch and a light. So we see the association, but when you study the light switch, you realize the light switch does not have the necessary property to generate the power. So then you say, no, this can't be the source. The way that Allah created everything starting from yourself, you understand there is an ajzu mutlaq. That means they are absolutely contingent and powerless. Which is basically, this is what you call it, let's say, what you call it, the seed. It's essentially, it's a carbon, nitrogen, and a hydrogen, and an oxygen. You break down and you see this is basically, there's some particles out there, they don't have any mind, they don't have any, so in other words, it's just certain things, just, like a crazy.
But why can't I say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a process by which hydrogen and oxygen turn into water?
No, we say this, we say, basically, the reason, because that's not the reality. The reality is not that Allah is actually creating an automated process through which that's happening. The reality that Allah has a certain process through which He actually creates water. But He creates water. The process does not create it. Why? There are few reasons. One is, if you truly study, you find that very outcome is linked to the entire universe. There is absolutely no way for that particular particles to claim this knowledge and establish this connectivity and gain this power to do what they do. So in a way that the lack of knowledge, the lack of power in every particles, they give you that. Nursi used very nice phrase. He says that if you think the particles are the cause of the effect, you have to give all attribute of God to every single particles. He says, look, then you have to say every atom is like a God. Why? Because the way that every atom behaving as if every atom is actually acting in connection with the entire universe, with the knowledge of the whole universe, and with the power to affect the whole universe, say you stay there, then I'm going to do this. But it's this what you see as an atom is mindless, powerless, and basically the quantum physics is telling us almost there is nothing out there as you appear to be, because it's just, there is a wave. Only when the observer observes, the wave collapses. That's what you call them particles, and it's always coming and going into existence. So it does not have a certain stable, independent existence and nature on which could do something. My best example would be this. Would you ever think that a shadow could be the source of anything, could do anything?
No.
No, why? Because a shadow is contingent completely, has absolutely nothing. The best analogy most Muslim scholars use, they say the entire creation is shadow, which means the very nature of creation is extremely contingent. Remember, Radha was using first day contingency as like to explain that why God is behind everything. So you can't say this shadow is causal on this, because shadow is complete powerless. It depends on something else. So it's absolute essential to understand the shadowy nature of existence. But to us, because study from ourselves, you think, you have a power, I'm moving, I'm talking. As I talk and as I walk, perhaps the tree has certain things as well, with which they do something. But actually, once we realize, no, I cannot talk and I cannot walk, I'm powerless, is God actually working within me? That will be, in a way, intuitive evidence for me to understand everything's powerless as well.
Yeah, I think the question is more about, I understand exactly what you're saying. The question is, how do you convince a teenager or a child? I think it's going to be something we have to think about, is to present this argument in a way which the child can process and accept, especially if they're already quite skeptical or whatever they might be. But because I get the argument, but I'm not able to articulate the argument in the sense of.
Yeah. So again, I think I get it, but I think there are a few things we could do. Is against that we need to ask Allah to guide us and help us to do that. But I think one thing we would say you can use from Quran in a way that how Quran says Allah does the work. Remember one ayah says, "Kullu yawmun wa huwa fi sha'n." So the Quran does not talk about a God that who actually initiate the process and is actually watching out there. So the Quran is very clear that God is directly. There's one word is the two words used in the Quran about creator. One is khalaq, the other is khalaq. What is the difference between khaliq and khalaq? The Quran uses both of them for Allah. What is the difference between Khallaq and Khaliq?
Allah has more creativity.
See, Khaliq is creator. Khallaq is constantly creating. And the Quran explicitly uses that one. We're not talking about God. Most people, when they refer to God, they talk about Khaliq. He's creator. But Quran says God is Khallaq as well. He's Qayyum as well. Which basically means Khallaq means He constantly creates that. And the other argument you could say, you know, for the business point of view, would you ever hire someone if it will make absolutely no difference for you to do the work that you do? No, it doesn't make sense. Why? If you're gonna do the certain work, let's say I'm gonna make presentation, and the effort and time, if I hire someone, it's gonna make no difference whatsoever. Would you hire that? No point. If for the infinite power, for him to do directly, versus to do through, let's say, creating something with ability, if it makes absolutely no difference, why should he employ the cause as the cause rather than doing himself? The reason that we have to make the machine, because it makes easy for us to make it that way. We try to, basically, it's difficult. We make all this, let's say, machine to make easy. But for the infinite power, there is no easiness and difficulty. So for him to do himself directly versus to create the cause with the ability to make it, it makes absolutely no difference.
Yeah, I think that's the argument. There's no need for Allah to create a machine.
And there's no need, therefore, why he should give it to them. Why he will not do the second is that if the whole purpose to really reveal his oneness and not having any association, as the Quran clearly mentioned, he doesn't want you to somehow, you know, see those cause might be the source. Then you go to that. And therefore the Tawheed completely negate to give any role to any cause at all.
Yeah, I get that now. So I created the machine to make the baklava because of my imperfection.
Exactly. Or because it's your impotence. Your power is limited.
Limited power.
Exactly. Yeah. If your power was infinite, you will never do that because it will become unnecessary.
Yes. Okay.
Nonsense. Doesn't make sense.
But the machine is also impotent, right?
Yes.
Because it's dependent at every moment for its existence on Allah.
Exactly. But that's why.
There's no difference from the chef, really.
No, there is a difference in the sense that the argument could be presented that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has put in a process, like I made the process of the machine for it to happen. So I just have to kind of start it off and then the machine does it.
Yeah, but then you're coming back to the Allah starts the ball rolling, then the ball rolls itself.
Yeah.
Then actually, how does the ball roll itself? It has to have all of the attributes of a God. So it can't do that because of its interconnection.
Yeah, but
atom has to be interconnected.
That argument, I get the argument, but I'm thinking about trying to explain that to a 7-year-old. So I was trying to come up with what argument might work for a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old. And the argument, I think, for me anyway, that works, is that I created the machine because of my limited capacity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have limited capacity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need to create the process by which the hydrogen and the oxygen create water. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can just do it.
But then the 7-year-old will say, well, you are creating the process, you're creating the machine, and the machine's doing it. So you have to disabuse the child of the idea that the
machine's not doing it. Yeah,
not only that, like I think we can do it in a way that who gave me the brain to create the machine? Who gave me the materials to create the machine?
Yeah, but that's a different argument. That's a different argument. We're still going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the ability to create the machine, but the machine has been created to make the baklava from the bread. This is a slightly different argument that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need to have a process to get the hydrogen and oxygen to make the water. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that. There's no process, causation. Yeah, the causation argument.
This is what I'm saying, is really, really essential to eliminate the causation and to say that everything is creation. So, and everything, what I mean that even to say Allah gave me the brain and I do with that, that's causation as well. Because essentially everything that invented, so-called made by human being, is the creation of Allah as well. It's not like you make some things, then that's what when we say man-made, we just use this for analogy. is really in reality everything is God made. That what appears from man, from human is also work, but that's requires little higher level to really understand that.
So could you explain the existence of the angels, for example, and specifically the angel of death, right? Because we know that the angel of death is sent to take the soul. So how would you explain that?
He's the angel expert here.
No, don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Finished today. No more.
Huh?
Angels are like filters, aren't they, right? Like if you look at the sun, you can't look at the sun directly, right? You need a filter. You can't see Allah directly. Angels are the filters, very simply put. We need them, he doesn't need them, we need them.
I understand, but still...
Okay, then you understand.
The concept is, or we've been told that, okay, the angel of death comes and he takes the soul of a body, right? So how do you explain that for causation now?
But I think what Nursi explained is, he says that everything is a veil. It's what you see, it comes from them, it comes through them, not from them. So in other words, it's actually Allah who yuhyi wa yumit. It's very clear, Quran says. So it's Allah that actually gives that. But Allah gives that through illnesses, through angel, but not from angel or not from illnesses.
Maybe a good analogy is if you're doing gardening with a gardening glove, right? Yeah? And you're picking thorns from the rose with a gardening glove. Is the glove doing the gardening with a hand?
No, I understand that.
So then
like, what I'm trying to get to is like...
There's no causation involved there.
No, but everything like... you know, we look at when we say like the sunnah of Allah, that subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets things like He does His creation in a certain pattern, if you may, right? So, for example, right, for a human being to be formed, right, the general pattern is there's the male and the female, correct? Obviously, there's an exception to the rule, and that's right. But that's what I mean by is that there is a pattern in creativity, in the creation, right? And that's what we call the sunnah of Allah. And the same.
It's not a causative.
Yeah, but that's why really I think what we do. Let me just briefly, because Sister Uzma, remind us that we have to finish it, wrap it up. So I think that's the brief. Yeah.
So I actually was This is, I like this, but can we see like a practical?
Yeah, we're gonna see that. But back to that question. So essentially, really, for my understanding, the best is really the light switch and the light. So in a sense that there is established mechanism for you to get the light here, you have to use the light switch. But in this case, when you study those light switch, you'll see the light doesn't come from that. Same thing, angel is like a light switch, like the bulb, through which that you get certain creation of Allah. That is that. That is makhluk as well, as that's created as well. So in a sense, it's essential to really link everything to the Creator. But meanwhile, recognize the creation happened through a certain channel. So in this case, the angel is a channel through which the dart comes to you. The tree is a channel through which the fruit comes to you. The cow is a channel through which the milk comes to you. So in that case, and you are the channel through which that certain blessing of Allah comes to you, that you think is me and move, I do something. So in a sense that basically we recognize the causal mechanism in terms of the mechanism through which the creation happened, not as the source of what we see as an effect. Otherwise, the mechanism is there. The illness, the germ, the microbe is there. The causing appear to cause the death. But what is the actual source of that? What you meet is Allah is actually giving you the death. But He creates the apparent cause of illness, and He creates the apparent cause of angel. They seems to appear to have a role in that. But that role is just appearance, not in actuality. In actuality, the source is Allah alone. That's understandable, but we can talk. So very, very fast, we just finish it. You need to finish it. So the second one, analogical thinking. We're going to give an example. We'll have it the whole session afternoon in terms of practical example. But just briefly, to just make sure we understand those. Analogical thinking, we choose analogy, the best analogy. Like let's say if you're talking about the eyes, the analogy is a camera. We're talking about the brain, the analogy computer. You're talking about bird, the analogy is an airplane. So we use analogy because our methodology is based on ana. that we try to relate to the ana, to experiential knowledge, and to go from there. So we use analogy for that reason. So, and we mentioned yesterday is the ayah in Quran emphasizing on analogy. So in this case, basically, our point here, through the analogy, you can comprehend better, and you can digest better what you have it, what you want to learn. So the Quran, we mentioned, praise that alam tara kayfa darab Allah. So darab Allah here is actually is a tamthil, is a form of analogy. So we talk about it when we refer to the the bad kalimat tayyiba, kalimat khabisa. So that's analogy. So even prophetic stories in Quran are actually a form of analogy that you see Quran used very intensively. So we in this case rely on analogical thinking based on those. So we discussed those yesterday, if you remember that. And again, it's like, let's say you try to look at the chocolate cake and then use analogy. You say, okay, how does chocolate cake come into existence? That's like, think analogously and how it could come into existence. So we use against the older things like analogy. Again, you can see eyes compared to the camera. So we cover the subject. So we use this and try to see what are similarity, what are the differences. The objective here to understand what it takes for the explored phenomena to come into existence. Because you know what it takes for camera to come into existence from your own experience. Now, could use this knowledge to see what it takes for the eyes to come into existence. Okay? Then the third, critical thinking. For the little kids, we call question, the third step, question. So it's la ilaha part of the kalimat tawheed. So again, the objective here is to negate cause, nature, and chances built up on the previous dimension, that analogy. So in this case, basically, you try to engage in the questioning to filter truth from the trash in the, let's say, existing knowledge. And our hero is the Prophet Ibrahim. We think he was truly a critical thinker and is basically helping people to understand the falsehood. Okay, so against that you see more examples, but let's say if in terms of cake we're talking about, when we say, okay, if you have ingredients, if you have the recipe, would you think the wind can come and push this ingredients and make the cake? Would you think a monkey can go and just make a delicious cake for you? Would you think a baby could make it? What do you need for a cake to come into existence? Then we say, look, what they teach you in school, the recipe is a DNA coding in the seed, and the ingredients is the soil, the water, the sun. How come they can come together and make those delicious, strawberry fruits for you? So again, we use what they know from experience to have them to question what they are being told in classroom in terms of nature, cause to be the source of what they observe. Okay. So again, we say, is it possible when you have this, let's say, vinegar and let's say you mix vinegar and with sand, and you get chocolate cake? What would you say? Say amazing, it's a miracle. But that's what, when you mix the hydrogen and oxygen, what you get is a water. It has nothing to do with the hydrogen and oxygen. Why you think it's just a natural, it's a normal? It's not normal, it's absolutely miraculous. So that's, again, we use analogy here to say, look, this is what they call emergent properties, just nonsense. It doesn't explain what is out there. There's a miracle out there. So be aware of that, again, through the questioning, like the example we mentioned in terms of like critical thinking. If you see, Apple iPhone on the tree, you become amazed. Why aren't you amazed when you see fruits hanging over the tree as well? The fourth steps, meditative thinking. That is the connect and communicate stage. We call the connect for little minds. So the objective here now, to establish the case that the maker is God. How do you know it's God? If it's not nature, chance, and cause, how would you know it's God? So we do in terms of emphasizing the interconnectivity. We say that everything is connected to everything else. That means whoever makes one thing must be the maker of everything. So, and that's is infinite power, and therefore there could be only one infinite power alone. So our argument here, like, we look at it in a holistic way and see interconnectivity. And our argument here, we say, never teach an apple coming from apple tree. we need to teach that apple comes from the tree of the universe, which means that the entire universe work collectively in a way, in the way it's created, is actually helping each other for a single apple to come into existence. Which means that the maker of a single apple could only be the maker of the entire universe. So, and that's basically, the interconnectivity is essential in the model to emphasize. Same for water as well. For the droplet of water to come into existence, we will argue the entire universe has to work together. Which means you can't get a droplet of water without the whole universe to really work and give you that. So therefore, we emphasize the interconnectivity. And finally, is moral thinking. We call it appreciate. So in this case, we try to emphasize that everything is a customized, special gift meant for you. Actually, in reality, you could say even now when you go for food, that every food that you're gonna enjoy is meant and written for you if you're gonna eat. Otherwise, you know, before even you're born, it was determined and written in your qadar, you're gonna come to Istanbul, you're gonna go and enjoy, let's say, particular food. Not only that, which part of that food is going to go to which part of your body, that's also already determined. Which means everything is a customized, special gift to everyone in the universe. And now with that obviously you will see the value and you will have the appreciation. We call it this, we codify this as a zikr, fikr, shukr. So again, basically, you know, in the model we have that to really connect to God and understand the value and appreciate based on that. Another argument here, this is a nice video you can watch yourself. This guy, he's professor at Princeton University, and he gave a talk about the morality of fundamental physics. Morality. And when he gave a talk at the Cornell University, he said, his studies said, look, I am atheist, don't think I'm a believer, but I could not help myself by learning certain moral lessons as I study and explore physics. Now our argument, if an atheist can derive moral lessons from the universe, for sure, we as a believer can learn many moral lessons, whatever subject that we study, and therefore moral thinking is one basic one. Like let's say math, you teach math, you say what is a straight line? Definition, straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. Oh, if you want to go from point A to point B, the best way is to go straight way. Oh, that is a sirat al-mustaqim. Oh, that's why when you in the Fatiha you say ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. That means basically Islam is the straight path. That's the best path. That's the shortest path for what you want to accomplish in life. So again, you're teaching maths basically, by you deriving certain moral lessons from the maths that basically you want them to apply. And the Quran is very, very clear when you look at that. It talks about, basically the balance in the universe. Then it says that you shall also keep the balance in your acts. And Surah Al-Rahman is very clear. And so which means that there are moral lessons that is already out there embedded in the universe. As we observe them, we can actually practice them as well. Again, this is, we codified zikr, fikr, shukr, and in terms of really remember God behind this phenomena, and remember its value in terms of fikr, and have the full appreciation in terms of shukr. So we use what if type of things to appreciate, like you eat food, there's a fuel for you. What if we're like a car and you go and have to actually get the fuel from, this is the AI drawing that. So what if that Allah create you like this? That's essentially it's a fuel, that's what you get it. Oh, that means it is absolutely a special kindness that Allah create those delicious food that though they are like a fuel for us, but we really eat and enjoy that. So we bring certain what if question to have them to really appreciate what we really enjoy in this regard. Again, we see the whole universe like a classroom. We say that basically we need to look at the life as a place, not a trail only, as a place of training. That means that everything happened to us is happened for a certain reason, that we need to derive lessons to see how we can become a better human being. That's all I think that we will talk about